Welcome to Visual Insights. This is I don't know how many so far, but this is a series we've been doing in this time. For you that don't know me, my name is Harrison. The company I'm with is SlowTheGameDown, and I'm also the director of training for neurodynamic vision. I've been training visual performance skills for 20 years and learned all from my father, Dr. Bill Harrison, who started in the 70s, working with pro baseball players, golfers, tennis players, a variety of different athletes on the visual aspect of the game. And today we got a family friend and a sports vision optometrist, someone who also has been doing it, spends more time in golf, and Craig Farnsworth, Dr. Craig Farnsworth, known as the Putt Doctor. Craig has written a couple books, and one's called See It and Sink It, and the other one's The Putting Prescription. He also has a website called the Putt Doctor. And it's awesome to have a friend, family friend, and a fellow sports vision guy, Dr. Craig Farnsworth, on with us today.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it, big time. You know, the more I listen to you on these podcasts, the more you sound like your father, so it's exciting. Both in voice and content.
Well, you know, being around him, you know, I got to hear it every day, and as a kid, I probably never listened to it. But as I got older, I figured out, hey, my dad might know something. And we had a pretty good fun run for the last 20 years, working with all different kinds of athletes. Learned a lot from them.
Yeah, well, as you know, as a parent, they start listening and thinking you know something sometime in their early 20s, hopefully.
Yeah, I got my two boys, and I don't know anything around them.
Good kids.
Yeah. So let's, you know, for people who are participants here, please stay on mute. And as you guys have been on before, there is a chat down there. If you have any questions, whether it's sports vision related, golf related, or any other sport related, love to try to answer those questions as well as we get through this. Craig, give us a little history of you and, you know, where you came from, how you got into optometry, sports vision, and now as the Putt Doctor.
Sure. I obviously was always interested in sports, mainly because my dad ended up being a golf pro, but he was also a quite well-known golfer in Indiana. So I used to caddy for him, and from that caddying, felt there was a love for golf, and so I jumped into that. And I'd say the number one scenario was that I knew when I went to college and joined this one fraternity that was my father's fraternity, that I would be bringing a lot of players home or golfers home from the fraternity. And so I thought maybe that would help me be somewhat of a big shot, even though I was only a freshman. So it worked out fine. A lot of them came home during the summertime and helped me mow the grass along with my brother and dad. And then we'd go out and play 18 to 36 holes a day in the afternoon. So parlay that into getting drafted and doctor's draft, Vietnam War. And I met someone around the bar scene a few times named Dr. Bill Harrison. And we struck up a conversation.
I didn't think you ever went to the bar.
What's it?
I didn't know we ever went to
we didn't drink. We just sat there and acted like we belonged. So eventually, your dad started pretty much the key person to start the sports vision section for the American Optometric Association by pulling together top optometrists doing sports vision, actually more visual training, in the middle 70s. And we started testing the Olympic athletes on their visual skills. And your dad was instrumental in doing that, which later became sports festivals. And the optometric community was first and foremost in testing these athletes' visual skills, finding out a lot of things about how vision related to performance. So from that, we touched base on and off for quite a while, and then we ended up working together, trying to get something going in television, comic books, you name it, all the stuff we blew all our money on, okay, from loans to cash at hand. But we connected quite a bit through your love of baseball, and he brought me in to work with the Royals and some guy named Bo I got to spend several hours with Bo Jackson working with him on visual skills. Obviously, some guy named Rambo or Mike Diaz. I remember working with him on a bicycle. He was going to town and telling me, I always get to this certain point minutes-wise, and then I hit the wall. So I said, well, have you ever thought about getting outside your body and doing things? And he goes, I think I know where this is leading. So we spent probably another half an hour to 45 minutes just giving him visual drills and being in the moment. And he said, I've never lasted that long. So he said, now I realize that visual skills have a lot to do with physical endurance, not just visual endurance. So on and on from that, we did the Cubs, trying to think of who else I was down there with, the Royals, okay? And obviously fun time, spending time with some of the great athletes in the era.
Yeah, the thing is about my dad, and you spent a lot of time with him in those years. He was doing stuff that was fairly groundbreaking. It wasn't talked about, and even today, it's probably fairly groundbreaking as well.
Yeah.
And the word sports vision or vision training or vision therapy, or it's a word that should mean a lot more, but for some reason, and you deal this with the golfers, we deal this with the baseball players, whatever sport it is, they tend to go to the physical, they tend to go to maybe the mental, but they get away from understanding that vision is such a huge, important part of their game. And if they can learn how to control that, they can obviously succeed from what, you've seen it, I've seen it. But what do you think? Why do you think some of the reasons that people don't spend more time on the visual aspect of the game?
Well, I think that when you look at golf magazines, you look at a lot of what comes out, it's so much more on the skill of how to hold a bat, how to swing, and very few times do they realize that most sports are visual sports. And so they assume that because there's you can see and you can catch a ball occasionally and occasionally you can hit a ball, that your eyes are fine. And so, they've sent people into eye doctors. They come out seeing 20/15, don't need glasses, things are fine. So they don't understand the difference between eyesight and vision. So eyesight being reading clearly a chart and seeing clearly. Vision takes in a lot more and puts the rest of the map together. And so very few people even that work on visualization, for example, understand the accuracy of visualization, and that just giving it a word and a brush off seems to be all they're used to doing. And as you know from optometry, we've developed visual skills and visualization accuracy, which is important to use the skill consistently and under pressure.
Yeah, and I think, I know my experience is everyone wants that magic pill. Do I see or do I not see it? In fact, I got a call of a young baseball player's father called me and said, I think he needs to have LASIK surgery because he's swinging and missing the ball. And it's like, wait a minute. Don't just go to that quick fix. We got to do LASIK. Now, I'm not saying LASIK is wrong for him, but let's go down the chapters and let's say, why does he need LASIK? Is it really a clarity issue? Is it a comfort level of his lenses or glasses? Or does he have visual skill issues that aren't coordinating with his eye-hand coordination?
Right.
There's so much variety of different things to it. It's not as simple as, let's put glasses on him and he can see again.
Right. Well, it comes back really into the early 1960s when an optometrist actually tested the Cincinnati Redlegs. And that was the first time that anything had been published on vision and baseball. And he found there were 3 levels of baseball players' visual skills. The pitchers, if there's pitchers involved, they were generally the lowest of the visual skills in related to abilities. And the next category were the batters. They were better than the pitchers in terms of the visual skills that he tested them on, such as peripheral awareness, speed of recognition, eye hand, blah, blah, blah. Then there was a third category, which was a category that was better than all the rest. and he deemed that the Frank Robinson category because there was one player, the superstar on the team, that had better visual skills than anybody else. And so he reported this, and it started making people aware that, hey, great athletes have to have great visual skills, not just visual acuity. And so he, I think, was a catalyst in getting us all to appreciate more of why vision was important in sports, almost any sport.
Yeah, here's a funny story off that. Joe Morgan was part of that team. And I saw Joe Morgan, I don't know how many years ago, but it's been a while. It's probably 10 years ago. And was talking with Joe Morgan. And he wanted to learn a little bit more what my dad did and we did. And he's going, oh, yeah, I remember we got tested. He goes, I used to use, and you got to forgive me, there was a depth perception device. I can't think of the name of what it's called, but that it was a big machine that they had to carry with the cards on the end.
Right.
And he goes,
right.
yeah, I used to use that every night. He goes, but it broke. And then once it broke, I didn't know what else to do. And it just took up so much time and energy from him. But he goes, if you got something better, he goes, I don't know why every player, every athlete should be doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a guy that came to me once. We had opened this big facility in Denver, and in the Denver Post, or I guess the Rocky Mountain News, did almost a whole page on our facility. We had 25-foot ceilings, trampolines, everything else. And this one guy came in and he said, by the way, I was kind of exposed to this with this Royals. And I look back now and I really poo-pooed it. But look at the guys that jumped into this, from Frank White and Patek and some guy named George Brett and on and on. He started naming 6, 7 guys that jumped into it full time. He said, who's the best players on the team? He said, I can't believe that I was so stupid to realize that I had all the answers when those guys got better and I didn't. So I said, well, are you interested in doing anything? He said, well, not really. I'm out of baseball now. I just wanted to come in and tell you how stupid I was. Okay.
It's funny. I get people saying all the time, man, where was this when I was playing? I said, you know what? It was there. You just weren't ready for it. Yeah. And, a lot of people after their careers, whatever sport it is, they start looking back and start going, what was important and what were some of the things that would have made them a difference? And, you probably see that a lot in golf is, the difference a lot of times in any sport is how that visual input gets to the brain and how you react to it. And if you're giving trash information into the visual input, or blurred visual, blurred and not from a clarity, but blurred into not clean information, the results aren't going to be there.
Yeah, I think people think, especially golfers. So by the way, as you know, your dad and I have tested and been involved with the Olympics, and I think I've worked with 20-some different sports, even at the Olympic Training Center. But of all the sports I've worked with, golf seems to be the furthest behind when it comes to visual skills, because it's supposedly not a reactionary sport like following the dynamics of a ball, that they don't realize that it is reactionary in terms of what you perceive beforehand, as well as if we just mention one thing only, and that's being in the moment. And what system gives you more visual or ability to be in the moment than the visual system? And the reason most people give it only lip service is because their visual skills aren't enduring enough to last for that long, or to be able to turn it on and turn it off. So they get self-distracted and they wonder why they can't be in the moment. And I ask players, how many times do they do drills off the field that relate to being in the moment? And you know what the answer is, of course.
Yeah.
Big zero.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about that, like visual focus. And again, when people ask me all the time, well, how does this relate to, soccer? What does it relate to softball? What does it relate to race car driving? I always look, can you play with a blindfold on? And what is that visual demand that is required to do that sport? And they're very different in every single sport, where golf doesn't have that eye-hand reactionary, like you would get from hockey goalies or baseball. but it is a lot about that visual focus, how you concentrate, how you control your visualization skills. And, again, I kind of joke around and I say this, and I probably get myself in trouble. Visualization is visual. It's not mentalization. And we all think it's, sports psychology, but there's a mix, and they all interact. And, again, even as I bounce around here, physical ability, visual ability, and mental ability, they all cross over, but they all work together when we get them all, peaking at peak velocities, I guess would be a way to say it. But even, going back, Ray Carrasco, is someone we know together on there. And Ray won the Senior European Championship. And he talks a lot about how he used his eyes to get him through because he was so physically fatigued at the time. He had to learn how to control his visual focus. And I know you and I know a lot of stories about Jim Colbert together too, and even Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was a very good visualizer, but I imagine that's some of the success that you see with some of the golfers are the ones that are really good at learning how to picture and control their picturing.
Right. Well, we've done enough testing on athletes from, Tony Dorsett to Kiki Vandeweghe of the Nuggets at the time that led the Nuggets in scoring to some guy named Michael Jordan and Nick Faldo, for example. And every one of them that were an elite athlete that we tested had two skills that related to performance. One was motor skill and the other was visual skills. And we found 0 athletes that were in the elite level that didn't have great visual skills. Now, did they train it? Not all of them. They were lucky to acquire it or work on certain things that built their visual skills early, and or were fortunate to have accuracy of things into the brain, not by anything but chance, but they made good use of it and expounded on it and blew it up to elite proportions.
Yeah. There's a question here, but a couple thoughts. I'm going to manipulate this a little bit. How important is visual accuracy in the game of golf? And when I talk about visual accuracy, this is hard. I think we see. I think we're accurate of what we see, but as you know through experience, we don't all see the same thing. We all have different judgments. We all have different line judgments. We all have different depth judgments. What visual skills, what do you think in golf and how that acts and how you can get better at it?
Yeah, your dad and I had a saying, almost everything we do begins with what we see and what we perceive. And we know that perception of everybody is individual, or it's our truth, as we say. No matter what you think, it's your truth, and what I think is my truth. So a lot of times they don't overlap. But in the case of perception for golf, not only do we see players when they look at a target far away, see it clearly, but project it to the left or right of where it actually is, or especially short or long. And so we have a fun little test that we do with groups. Like I was at a ladies group a while ago, so they wanted to know what this has to do with them and their play. And so I had them all stand up and face each other. And so one would pick out who was going to go first of the two, and their job was to take a look at their buddy, close their eyes, reach out, and touch the tip of your buddy's nose gently. Okay.
Can't do that anymore.
And then, they're only about an arm's length away, and yet realize that's a visualization. Yeah, they did it with their eyes closed, but visually they had to project where that target was in space. So we know that 90+% of the players do not project accuracy in space. They see the hole left and short or right and long. And so they're always putting to an illusion unless they develop visual skills or they play enough to be able to learn how to compensate. But most players don't realize that when they hit a ball short, they knew it felt good, but ended up much shorter than what they thought. And they think it becomes technique. And so now we work on technique, and we forget about perception. So
yeah, I mean, that happens in baseball, it happens in all sports, but everyone, what I was telling in the baseball, softball world, they all go to their mechanics first. Whenever they're not perfect, they go to their mechanics first.
Yeah.
And when they're in that feel mode and when they're in the mechanical mode, they don't see very well. And, even going back and talking to all these great athletes of all different sports, you always ask them, or see it on TV. When you're at your best, what are you thinking about? Nothing. What are you feeling? Nothing. How well do you see things? I see things really, really good. Things are clear, slow. And when you struggle, you're thinking about everything. You feel horrible, stiff, nothing feels right, and you don't see very well. And it's not about clarity. It's about how you're controlling the systems and what you're going to.
Right. Well, we asked players what the basic skill like for chipping or pitching, and well, it's grip, stance, alignment. It's a technique thing. And I say, how about if I tell you the basic skill starts with eye-hand coordination, starts with visualization, starts with target accuracy. Where do you want to land it, and is that accurate? It's amazing how many don't realize that to be a great chipper, you've got to have basic skills, and you don't develop them just by chipping.
Yeah. And picturing, is so powerful. And I always bring this up too, is, we can picture negative stuff, and that is powerful in a bad way. And
as or more.
Yeah. And, it's even from a golf standpoint, don't hit the ball in the water. All you picture is ball going in the water. What are you telling your brain to do?
Yeah.
Go hit the ball in the water.
Yeah, I actually try and have my players that really get into it more than just basic. I'm going to putt better. I want to do this or that. I try and get them to do a diary, and I ask them, even in daily life, if you can spend one day a week at the end of the day taking a look at how many times you had a negative thought versus a positive thought. Number one. Then number two, how many times you'd replace that negative thought, or do you just jump right in and hope that it didn't influence what you did? And how many times do you really sit down after the day like that, or after a performance, and try and replace every negative with the positive, as opposed to leaving the scene of the crime with a bad picture? And so if we did some little things like positive diaries, or get them to appreciate, all right, I'm going to do 3 holes, and I'm going to try and monitor every time that I get a negative picture, I'm going to replace it. Or can I just go out and have nothing but good pictures for 3 holes? We're starting a lot better into what we'd like to get them to do.
Yeah. I get a lot of thoughts in my head. I'm trying to keep them under control in this conversation. But I had a buddy tell me a college softball coach was talking to their college golf coach and asking about technology and all the different technology they're using. And he looks at him and goes, you know what? He goes, we got all this great technology. Everyone's using it. He goes, but we're horrible golfers. We have no ability to feel. We have no ability to adjust, because they're so worried about what the data says. And this happens in baseball and softball and tennis and hockey and everything. But I'm going to add to this. I had 2 pro golfers that I won't name, but they're really interested in that visual component of the game, but on lip service only, because when they talk about it, they want to go back. But if I don't have my hands right, if I don't get my stance right, if I don't do this, I can't even think about seeing. And my clubs aren't fit right now, so I'm really more worried about my fit of my clubs than worried about what I'm focused on. How do you deal with some of those things, or thought process there?
Well, that's a good one. Then ad infinitum, they just keep going and going. And if you think about it, they're trying to perfect everything. And we try and get them to put together a little of the physical, which is important, whether it lessons and even dry firing. How about going through your swing multiple times in front of a mirror without a ball, etc. And then how much time do you spend, even if it's on the practice tee, working on performance skills as to how to think? So as you know, when we work with centering and concentration, centering is deciding on which sensory system you're going to use. Is it going to be physical? Is it going to be mental, visual, tempo, etc.? And have you decided on that before every shot? And then concentration is, can you stay there for a second or two? Okay, which most cannot. And so I try and get them to start dividing their practice into both. And if we stood there and looked at, all right, you got 10 people on the back of this range, how many of them are working on their physical skills and how-tos or mechanics? And how many are working on performance skills now that you have a little idea what we're talking about with performance skills? Well, you know, it's either 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 are constantly trying to perfect their swing and don't really get into the mental aspect other than maybe going through a routine. So
Yeah, and I think you brought something up there, centering. I want to add to it, and you know what it comes down to is we think as humans that we can focus on everything, that we can focus on everything and control everything, but the reality is we can't. And you're right, we have to center, we have to decide, you know, is today a physical practice, is today a mental practice, is today a visual practice, and figure out where to go from there.
Yeah, and at least I have my players write down, what are you going to practice? How much time are you going to spend? What are you going to focus on, mechanical or performance or both? And then what have you learned, and write down what you felt, what you learned that you could carry forth, as opposed to think you're going to remember it and that's it. And we've got a guy on here named Earl Svenningson. So I want to tell Earl that, believe it or not, I found an old video from Channel 4 in Denver, Earl, of you talking about working with me in Sports Vision. And it was really cool to see back then. We looked a little younger than I think now, but it was fun to listen to you talk about some of the stuff that we used to do. So let you know, I haven't forgotten about you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, you know, and that kind of goes back, you know, what I said at the beginning is Sports Vision's not new. Some people think it's new. It's just they don't know how to, they never knew how to answer, you know, ask the right question. But going back on the optometric side of things, and I know you had your office in Denver and don't practice anymore. My dad had his practice. But you know, for any optometrist that's listening, what's your recommendation, or do you have any thoughts of the idea of Sports Vision, or how they get involved in, or what they should reach out and learn or not learn, anything like that?
Yeah, well, I've seen Ivan Groupie, one of my old buddies, basketball buddies from Denver's on, and you know, he sent me some students. But I would say, if anything, going to classes and learning visual training as a basis is good, because taking what I used to and your dad used to do for the kids and upping it quite a few levels is helpful. And so I would get involved with local study groups, and there's plenty of Sports Vision lectures around that they can access and go in national meetings. And certainly, like, I get a lot of instructors that come and watch me teach. Go into someone's physical plant and just be a bug on the wall for a while. See if you like this, see if it's important enough, which we think it is, to expand your practice.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for the people out there, there is kind of what I look at as kind of roles. You have your doctor, Sports Vision person. You also have your trainer, Sports Vision, and you have your coach, Sports Vision. There's kind of a role for every single one of them, that it's hard to do all three, as you know. And, you know, even for my dad, he kind of separated a lot of those things because you couldn't bunch everything together because it just took too much time and energy. But, you know, there is, you know, a great opportunity. Athletes need to have vision as part of their realm. And as a doctor, the doctor should be the beginning of understanding that this is a demand that could be looked at. You know, we are working on education programs, and we will have more education programs and what we call academy.ndv performance, and where we're going to have lessons for the doctors to help set them up. We'll have lessons to have golf. We'll have lessons for baseball. We'll have lessons for how do you deal with kids and stuff like that. So that's kind of a goal, is, you know, taking all, you know, stuff that you've done from the beginning, from my dad from the beginning, and really try to make this, you know, where people want it. It's going to be there every single time, and not just to the great athletes, but to all different athletes.
Well, yeah, you do even know that we did a lot of work with the Armed Forces Elite Commandos.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It took us only 8 years to get them to convince them that shoot, move, and communicate was not as basic as eye-hand coordination, target accuracy, concentration, visualization, etc. So wheels move slow everywhere, but once they got it, okay, they put everyone through the visual skills. And I mean, we've got skill drills that are that thick that they use and apply in different ways. Plus they have all the equipment, and probably a good place to go back in and update them, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, no, I've been going through a bunch of old documents. In fact, I just pulled up today, I've seen it, the 1972 Kansas City Royals vision training book that my dad created for them, for the players.
Wow.
And there's still some, I mean, I go through that, I'm like, wow, you were doing this stuff back then? This stuff is amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
one of the things that we gave was, you know, and your people can do that too, is we put random numbers, I don't know if you all can see that or not, on 3 panels. And not all the numbers from 1 through 60 were on 1, then 2, then 3, but sometimes it could be 1, 2, and 1, then 3 in the next, 4, 5 in the next. So you could alternate them and move them around, whatever. But this little 3-panel, find the number, call it out, touch it before you go from 1, 2, 3. That simple little test, and we've got them a lot more, shall we say, updated and special than this silly thing. But one test defined the special forces. And the general was watching me do this test, and he goes, you know, we don't have to do anything more right now. I don't even know if we need you guys. You've given us the test that we can weed out people. We don't even need to, if they can't pass this test, we're not even going to have them in the well, I'm not going to mention the name, but in the commandos. I said, no, General, you know, this is a test that we do, but there's not one of these skills that we can't develop and make better. That's the point we're trying to make, not just the visual skills are important. And he goes, oh, no. I said that, you know, this is amazing. I said, well, why did you say that? He said, well, I'm looking at all the numbers, and the guy that went through and got this in a little less than 2 minutes, all 60 numbers, is our best commando. The guy that took 6 minutes to find 60 numbers is our worst commando. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still good, but he brings up the rear. We don't want him in the front leading the pack. And so there's part of what you get into, is that you don't realize people can develop visual skills. He just thinks you got it or you don't.
To, you know, the thought process, what is that visual demand of that athlete or that person? And that eye movement challenge that military had is huge, and those can be created. And sometimes, you know, again, it can be clarity, might be the issue why someone is not as good as the best. Okay, let's fix that. Or it might be some skill sets, tight eye muscles, whatever, visual processing skills that can be cleaned up. Or it might be just the tactical way that they go about using their eyes to perform the task at hand. I was listening to a coach talk, and it bothers me. I shouldn't say too much about this, but he was saying, oh yeah, we do vision training. We do the software. And I'm like, I just have to roll my eyes, because they think it's this one little thing that's going to make the difference. If they do a software program, they're going to get there. Now, I'm not saying don't do the software program, but we've got to find out what those, you know, whether it's a golfer, whether it's a baseball player, you know, whether it's a race car driver, what can we do to enhance that visual skill to make them successful, not in a one-stop shop situation.
We had a suspended ball in our laboratory, and this same gentleman that said he should have done what George Brett did with the Kansas City Royals. He said, can you do a couple tests? I'm out of baseball, but just do one test. So I said, okay. So I had him with a dowel stick, and I had him take a look at the ball. We moved it to different vertical positions. Okay, take a look, close your eyes, swing like you have to swing when the ball's out in space. So we determined that at a letter high fastball, he saw the ball so much lower that he was lucky to get the bat on it at all, letter high. So I said, okay, so now that I've done some testing, you can open your eyes. After each one, I'd have him open his eyes, but didn't get to see what he did. And I said, so bottom of the ninth, 3-2, man on third, man on second. You've got a 3-2 pitch coming to you, and he throws a letter high fastball with 2 outs, bottom of the ninth. What would you do? He goes, oh God. He said, I knew. He said, I hope they're going to call it a ball because I can't hit the damn thing. I said, so if you hit it, what do? Pop it up? He goes, yeah, how did you know? I said, well, because you see the ball here when the ball is actually here, and the best you're going to do is pop it up. He goes, see, I told you I was stupid. I told you I should have done this stuff. You can train that, can't you? And I said, yes, we can. That's why we're here. So,
it is amazing. I mean, I still think, how do I do this? And I learned obviously everything from my dad, but it's like you can decide what kind of a golfer someone is, what kind of baseball player, what kind of a driver, or whatever it is. You can see that you see some visual deficiencies and you say, oh, you're not good at this, especially under pressure. And they look at you and go, how do you know that? And it's like, well, that's how your eyes function. What do you mean? Well, the reason you're struggling with that certain play or that certain, throw or that certain, like, in fact, again, we can jump all over, but I had a NFL quarterback, and this is actually it's a concussion related visual issue. And I said, you're throwing short. You think the guy, or no, you're throwing over guys, aren't you? You think they're further away than they actually are. And he looks at me and goes, how do you know that's my problem? You've been watching film? And I said, no, this is how you see. And this is how what's going on. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I had this play. He goes, I know my mechanics were right. Everything was perfect. I couldn't understand why I was off. He goes, this makes sense now.
Yeah. No, it's amazing when you watch players and you test them. And we do a little test where we have them take a look at a target out in space, know their dominant eye, and then we have them look and point, and then we have them open their dominant eye and take a look. It's amazing how many of them are short. In fact, we did with Hideki Matsuyama. He wondered why he could never get the ball to the cup for putting. I mean, he was hardly halfway from a 40-foot putt. He saw things so much closer. It's amazing how good he was based on just knowing he had to hit the ball harder than he normally did, or putt with more energy. But even so, working with him on visualization, accuracy got him to be a lot better consistency with his longer putting. And his first 5 putts the next week were beyond the cup. Yeah. And a guy that was working with me said, I don't think he's seen that side of the cup in a year's time. So it's amazing how we perform based on our perceptions or misperceptions.
Yeah, I mean, that's, one thing, and you bring it up there. If you see the cup shorter, you're going to probably be short, but also then to adjust more times as you say, okay, I got to hit the ball harder. And that doesn't always work either.
Yeah, and then the ball goes off the green and you go, well, you hit it harder. Not very specific, but you did.
So from a golf standpoint, if you take, obviously putting is huge. And I personally don't play enough golf. I wish I had enough time to do it. And when I do play, my buddies get mad at me because I putt pretty well. And I don't practice my putt. I just know how to control my focus and how to control my anxiety and all those things. But what would you kind of, see that most golfers are missing when it comes to the visual component on the putting green?
Well, as you know, the visual focus is not there. It's amazing when I have players put down what their routine is for practice. How many of them do you think include mental other than routine? And so I try and get them to realize if they would divide their practice into, again, some mechanics without a ball, without a cup, please, and then some visualization of mechanics with the ball. And then how about switching from mechanics to, can you just talk to me about what you're going to do for the day as you're putting some 5-footers around the cup? It's amazing how many of them they make and how much better they are at distance control when they're just talking away and not thinking mechanics. So that is one part. The other part we like is getting them to appreciate that if they leave the pin in and they look up the pin, for example, if they're way short, does that help them with speed control? And we also had them look off to the side. So their ball's here and the cup is over here. So they're on the low side. And I asked them to point with their finger or their putter to the ball and then visualize how long it's going to take for the ball to get from a at rest position to getting to the cup at the right speed. So the ball's going to be a foot or so beyond the cup. And it's amazing how many of them have no clue, including tour players. I've never done that in my life. Who does that? And I'm going, well, most of my good players really do that because I ask them that peak athletic performance is almost always characterized by having a clear, accurate picture before you do it. Would you agree with that? Yeah. What's your picture? So I'd say, and we had a discussion on Facebook not too long ago, that the number one thing players leave out of their routine is visualization. It's amazing how quickly they jump to the mechanics once they miss a time or two and forget to put the all-important predecessor in. So I'm also big on that.
Yeah, so if I was a betting man and I had to go face some PGA guys on the putting green,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, because people always ask me this question, so it's what's the one thing I need to be better or to compete? What's the one thing that's going to make the difference in my game that's going to get me to the next level? And you know, my answer is it's not one thing, obviously, but what you have any cool little, I mean, no secrets necessarily, but fun things that you do that help people get and understand that, oh yeah, if I do this, this will help me tremendously.
Yeah, I'd say we start with consistency of setup. So I put a little parallax drill down with a couple of yardsticks, and they're all lined up perfectly. And then I get the player to get over the ball, and he's to tell me where are his eyes, as he could see in the mirror on the ground, that these two yardsticks that are apart by about that far, and they're 3 feet long, where do they look like they're pointing at each other instead of offline? And move your eyes back and forth and tuck your chin up and down. Where does it seem to be that those are aligned and that parallax is not a problem? And I say, if you just had a consistency of your visual setup in terms of the distance of the ball, the placement of the ball in your stance, and your eyes in relationship to the ball, we're off to a great start. And I'd start with that more than anything.
Yeah, awesome. So I pulled up today an article that you're familiar with. In June of 1975, Golf Magazine, Jim Colburn and Dr. Bill Harrison. And these are,
by the way, the first time that was ever written on the routine was with your father.
And this is stuff I know over time and everything like this, but I'm going to go through these questions. And for everyone who's listening, think about it, whatever sport you're playing or whatever task you're doing. But I'm going to play it from a golf standpoint. When you were not thinking, when you were playing well, you were not thinking about what your body was doing. True or false? You had a clear visual picture of the shot before you played it. True or false? Random or negative thoughts did not intrude during the stroke. True or false? You felt relaxed and confident. True or false? You had a high visual awareness of the ball or the target. True or false? Your mind was in the present. True or false? On the other side, when you were playing badly, you started thinking about your hands, your body, or the mechanics of the swing. True or false? Your centering went into your touch system and you began feeling your way through the swing. True or false? You have no clear picture either of how you were going to execute the shot or the shot itself. True or false? You were confused. True or false? You began to get tense. True or false? You tried to compensate and either overswing or start guiding the club. True or false?
You realize that's 1975, how appropriate that is now? Huh? I mean, was your dad ahead of his time?
I think especially in baseball with all the mechanic stuff that's going on and the launch angle and this, and I'm thinking all these instructors out there are talking about all these things about how you got to get your, in fact, I heard today, hip hinge and this and that. And I'm like, but they're getting away from all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the inner game of tennis, or it goes back to, great athletes. And what do great athletes do? And have a heightened visual awareness, whether they practice that on the course, off the course, whether they need training to get them there, or they figure it out on their own. Some figure it out on their own, but it's such a huge part of the game that people just don't put into play.
Yeah, and I think one of your questions was, how do you improve visualization? Well, certainly a lot less self-talk and a lot more pure visual pictures, and making that as one of the points they need to do just for a few holes. Can you do that without talking to yourself? Can you just operate off of a visual picture and not, yeah.
And I'm a little biased on this and may make a little people unhappy again, but the way we coach to think about what the elbow feels, what the stride feels. And then when it comes to sports psychology, we talk about talking to ourselves and telling ourselves we're great and telling ourselves we're this and that. And it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm great, but I'm not going to be good all the time. But it's creating that good visual plan of attack to whatever, shooting, to driving, to hitting, to blocking, whatever it is creating a good visual plan of attack and have the good visual skills to be able to do it.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And so we're out there beating the bushes, trying to get people to be aware. It's amazing though, teaching golf and really putting right now, how few players actually come to me for the mental side of the game. And yet, as you know, back in the sports festivals, back at the Olympic Training Center, where I started the Visual Testing and Performance Laboratory as a first director, and with Armed Forces and Secret Service and every other sport, been kind of known much more as a visual mental doctor, except in golf. So once again, it's a big dichotomy from most of the other sports and golf.
Yeah. So Craig, as we wrap this up, because I tell people I could talk forever and have long conversations. Tell everyone a little bit, because some who are familiar with you, some that aren't. You have a doctor, you have a couple books we talked about. I know you spend, you live in 2 places in the year, but you also do some traveling. And tell a little bit about what you do from your clinics and where you go and how people can get in touch with you.
Well, sure. I teach at the Palms Golf Club, which, as you can imagine, shut down right now in La Quinta, California. So I'm there pretty much from September through May. Take a few trips here and there, some to Italy. I was supposed to go to Belgium last week, or next week, sorry. And Italy, we go there, and I actually had 2 trips designed for China a year. But that's way down the list. So we do clinics at different clubs around the country during the summertime in golf. I do a lot of private lessons at the Palms and teach, generally speaking, putting skills, visual skills that relate. And then we spend several hours, if we can, on the practice tee talking about concentration. And if the players want to really get into it, getting into a lot of skill drills that they can do at home, which I think are important, but amazing how few golfers really ask for that. But we do clinics generally.
You do some certifications too, correct?
Yeah. What's that?
You do some certifications?
Yeah, so right now we've opened up an online certification class, first of a kind for putting. And so they can go online and either purchase the entire package, or as golf instructors, they can purchase 6 videos at a time. Right now, that's the only thing we're really starting to do, is that and the training aids. I probably go to FedEx about 3 to 4 times a week to fulfill orders. So that's about the big thing going on right now.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're at a time that there's not, we can't be out and doing the things we want to be doing and working on the things we do. But this is a great opportunity for athletes of all sports, all ages, to be working on the visual side of the game. They can do things at home. They can spend visualizing, spend time getting their visual be more efficient. There's so many things they can be doing where, you know, even talking about those pro golfers earlier, is they get caught up in their, I got to get my swing, I got to get this, I got to, you know, feel. They don't have time to do it right now. They can work on some things and how they use their eyes and their mind and their body to be more efficient. Now,
Yeah.
I have someone asked a question about youth baseball, favorite drills for youth baseball players 10 to 12 years old. And it's a good question. I don't know if I have 100% favorite drills, because it depends a little bit on the time, the energy, and what we're trying to accomplish. And this is every sport. Simple things is working on hand coordination, whether it's little wiffle balls, you know, hitting little wiffle balls or little beans, or we use these discs that are like bottle caps that we can fling, and they can work on hitting them and tracking them and hitting them. Even balls with numbers and things we'll use. You know, those are some of the drills per se that you can do to interact a little bit. But also there's the skill sets of speed of recognition, depth perception, visual processing skills that can also be part of that as well.
Do you have some things that players can get online, some depending on sports, et cetera, they can get from your perspective?
Yeah, well, you know, as you know, my dad, he was obviously very creative, which was a fault of his. I have a huge file system of a bunch of creative ideas that he had, but we do have some training products, as you know, that we use with a lot of our college teams and pro players that are individualized.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things he did a really good job, is understanding the team environment and really getting good at doing that. So we do have stuff on our Slow the Game Down, and we do have on our NDV performance site some charts that we're using, the interactive eye movements and physical movements and you know, visual decision making skill sets. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff out there that can be really good.
Yeah, so getting it through SlowTheGameDown.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ours is PuttDoctor.com, and we have a bunch of training tools that relate to putting, and hopefully can get into much more concentration stuff, as that's my main goal down the line.
Yeah, well, you know, Craig, I appreciate you coming on. It's, you know, we've known each other, I don't even know how long, but I know for a very long time. And, you know, I know my dad had you do a lot of things with him that you guys had a lot of great trips and a lot of experience out there. And I think doctors out there, I think coaches, I think it's a great time to get educated, more opportunities to learn a little bit more and understand that vision training is not just, you know, can you see? Is one or two better, and it's not just a software program, but it's a mindset, and you know, it's the techniques, it's the tactics, it's the skills, it's the clarity. They're all encompassing and could be very you know, beneficial to any athlete of any age or any skill set that wants to take their game to another level.
Amen. And keep getting the word out, because it's amazing that almost 100% of the athletes you work with, you're not quite sure how it connected and how it related, but it's amazing how much more they go this way, and you try and explain it, and it's hard to explain, and even for them, but the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah, definitely. Well, again, appreciate it. Anything else you want to add, or?
Well, no, I just thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate seeing you again and Warren, and look forward to maybe working together down the road somehow.
Yeah, definitely. And anyone who wants to reach out to us has more. There's a slide up that's got Craig's email address on there. It's got my email address and Warren's email address. And, you know, love to be helpful to you and enjoyed this conversation. So everyone have a great day and stay safe. And, you know, hopefully sooner or later, we may be wearing masks, but we'll be out on that course and out in the sport field fairly soon.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.